Okay, this video is for you if you were not in class when we were doing our Scratch in class practice file. What you want to do is watch through it. If you missed the second day, you may want to fast forward a little bit and then just get to the point where you missed in class and just watch that part. Okay, so what you want to do is go to the Scratch website, scratch.mit.edu. And from here, you're going to choose Create. That's going to open up a editor screen in Scratch. And what you want to do right here, it automatically gives it a name called Untitled and then whatever number you are at. What you want to do here is name it your last name, Practice. So I'm going to put my last name, Newton, but you type your last name. And then I'm going to type Practice. And then I'm going to put fourth hour. And I'm just doing that because I have several hours that I'm doing this for. You do not need to put an hour on there. Okay, so what we did in class is we spent time talking about the user interface of Scratch. So this is where you just get acquainted with the buttons and the menu bar and learn how to navigate around Scratch and discover what all it can do. So we're going to start way up here at the top. This button here, if you click it, it takes you back to the main Scratch page. Then here you have a regular menu bar where you just click on the word and a menu pops down. What I want to point out to you on Scratch is that you do need to save. Okay, it saves periodically, but it doesn't save every few seconds like Google does. So whenever you're working and you finish up a bunch of code, you want to make sure you hit File, Save Now. Okay, and that will save your work for you. Then Edit, Tips. When you click on Tips, what happens is you'll notice this section pops up. Okay. This is kind of like the help section in that it gives you 3 ways to find out about how to use Scratch on your own. The first one is by using step-by-step tutorials, and these are step-by-step. It will take you through step-by-step, show you a little video of how to do each thing, and it helps you learn how Scratch works. Then there's also a second tab called How To, and in there, there's different categories, like if you are really into effects and you want to know how to do something to your Scratch program that you're working on, just choose the category that you want. A little minus sign shows you that it's open, and then click within what you want, and it'll take you through and show you how to do things on Scratch. Okay. I'm going to go back to All Tips, and then here under Blocks, okay, this is where you're going to learn more about individual blocks. Okay, so these are the categories again. And you click inside, and these are different blocks that you can use. So when you click on it, it just explains what it does, and then I'll show you an example as well. Okay, so those are ways that you can get help in Scratch. When you are done with this tips section, just hit the little X and it slides away and gets out of your space. Okay. Also on help, you're going to notice there's this little question mark with a circle. And this is the blocks help. So let's say you're working in Scratch. A quick way to find out what a block does is to click on the question mark and then click on the block. And you'll see that the tips page pulled up for me on the block that I clicked on. And it's showing me how to use that block. Okay, so that's just another quick way to get help. Great ways to get help on your own if you're having trouble in Scratch. So let's keep moving across this menu bar up here. You're going to see a series of 4 buttons. The first one is Duplicate. Duplicate means copy. So the way these buttons work, if I want to copy this cat sprite, I would click on the button. It turns the button on. This is called a toggle button that goes on and off. And you'll notice that my cursor now turned into a little stamp. I'm going to click on what I want to copy. And then once I pull this apart, you'll see I now have 2 cats. Okay, so that's duplicate or copy. Then the scissors is delete. Again, you just click on it. Your cursor turns into a little pair of scissors. Click on the thing you want to delete. These two buttons are fun. They are grow and shrink. These are for making your sprite bigger or smaller. So you click on it. You'll notice that your cursor turns into, in this case, arrows pointing out for growing. You click on your sprite. Each time you click, it grows incrementally. Okay, so he's getting a little bigger each time. Bigger, 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 bigger. Okay, and if you want to shrink him, you click on the shrink button. Ding, 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 ding. And let's get him back to about a normal size here. Okay. All right. So you will notice as I go across this gray bar, I now have this part that says Save Now. That is telling me in Scratch that I have changed something, I've added something to this file, and it's not saved yet. So if I needed to exit out of Scratch right now, if I didn't save, my work would be lost. So you can just click here and hit Save Now. It'll take just a second, and notice how that changed to saved. So that's the same as doing what I showed you before, File Save Now. Same thing. Okay, but you do want to be aware that you've got to save in Scratch. Next thing over, this little folder is called My Stuff. When you click on it, it takes you to a screen that shows you all of your stuff. So it shows you your projects. Okay, you can sort them. This is the one we've been working on, so I'm just going to click on it to get back to it. I'm going to hit C inside so that we can actually work on it. Okay, next thing, this part just has your username. This is how you know that you are logged in to Scratch. And then notice that you can look at your Scratch profile. This is another way you can get to My Stuff, and then your account settings. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the rest of the screen. Basically in Scratch, your screen is in 3 parts. You have this part over here on the left, you have the middle part, and then you have the right part. The part on the left, this is called the stage. This is where your programming takes place, as far as this is where it executes. So if I were to program this cat to walk, this is where he would walk, across this stage. Okay. In the middle, this is called the blocks palette. It's kind of like an artist with colors on their palette. All blocks are categorized in these categories, and then they're organized by color. So they're very easy to find when you need them. Okay, then you have 2 other tabs up here that we're going to talk about in just a second. And then this part over here is where you actually do your programming, where you pull the blocks over to do the programming. I want you to notice up here in the upper right-hand corner that you have a little picture of your sprite. Okay, that's your character. It's called a sprite. And then you have an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. This is really important when you're programming. What that represents is where your character is on the screen. Okay, so if I were to pick this guy up and move him on my stage to a different position, when I look over here, my X and Y coordinate changed. I'm now at X 129 and Y 94. Okay, so every little part of this stage has an X and Y coordinate. So if I move my mouse around here, I'm looking down here at the X and Y coordinates. It's telling me what they are as I move my mouse around. This is important because when you are programming, there are times where you need certain parts of your program to show up at a very specific place. Okay, so you have to be able to identify, if I need my cat over here, I need to know that that's X negative 190, Y negative 100, and that's where I would program him to go. Okay. All right, so next step, let's talk a little bit about the stage. When I click on the stage, you'll notice now that some things changed. For example, over here on the programming part, no longer do you see the little cat and the X and Y axis numbers, and that's because we are now on the stage, and you can program the stage, but your blocks are going to be different. For example, when I look in my blocks palette now, when I am clicked on the stage, meaning it's selected, it has the blue border around it, there are certain blocks that don't work on a stage. Like I don't move my stage, so there's no motion blocks there. Now, there are other things that I can do with my stage, like I can play sounds there. can have control blocks there. So the point is, if you are clicked on something where certain blocks won't work, they won't show up for you. So that's kind of handy. All right. All right, let's dig in. We're going to start talking about specifics about sprites. Okay, the characters in Scratch are called sprites, and there are 4 ways to get a new sprite. You'll notice right here. New sprite, if you hold your mouse over it, you can choose a sprite from a library they've already created. You can paint a new sprite. You can upload a sprite from a file, and you can also use your camera. Okay, so on this, there are times where you might want yourself to be in your game or your project, or you might want someone else that you can take a picture of in it. Sometimes I use my dog because you know how I love my dogs. Sometimes I use my dogs in my programs. So anyway, I do want you to take a minute and click on the sprite library. This is what we did in class. We took some time to get acquainted with what kind of sprites are available. They are categorized over here, and then they're also by theme. So if you are an animal person like me, you love animals, you can click on the animal category, and here are your choices for animals. Okay. Also by theme, so let's say that you are doing something that has to do with a holiday, you could click in there. If you know for sure you're doing something that's underwater, you could click there, etc. So you may want to pause the video for a second and just look around. I think it's a good idea to get acquainted with all of these things and see what's available. Okay. So next thing, on your next assignment, you're going to be able to paint a sprite or upload or take a picture. But on this that we're doing in class, we're going to just stick with the cat for today, and you'll get to do a bunch of other fun stuff later. Okay. So let's now go to the stage, and the stage works very much like our sprite, where if you want a new backdrop on your stage, okay, you have 4 choices. You can use the library that they've already created, you can paint your own, you can upload, and you can take a picture. So again, just take a minute. I want you to get acquainted with what's out there. So click on the backdrop library. On this one, you can choose one now for this assignment that we're doing in class. Choose whichever one you want. You might want to pause the video and look around and choose which one interests you. I am going to choose the beach on Malibu for mine. Okay. Once you've changed your backdrop, just come back and we will talk about what's next. Okay, when you bring a backdrop in, you're going to notice some things. Whoops, I accidentally clicked over here, which is fine. We can talk about this first. On your sprite, something we need to talk about is these last 2 tabs up here, costumes and sounds. Okay, 100% chance you will have this on a quiz, a question about costumes, because this is confusing to people. Normally when you hear the word costume, you think about what a character is wearing. In Scratch, it's different. A costume is referring to the position that the sprite is in, okay? For example, when you look at my cat sprite, if you come over here to the costumes tab, this particular sprite has 2 costumes, okay? So the first one, it has one of its arms out and the opposite leg out, okay? Then when I click to the next one, and kind of watch my stage over here as I'm doing this, when I click back and forth like this, it starts to look like your cat is walking. This is how you create animation with a sprite, is you switch between costumes. Okay. Remember, costumes are not what they're wearing, it's the position the sprite is in, and it's used for animation. When you are working here in this section, notice that a paint palette comes up. So this is where you can add things to a sprite they've already created. Like you can put little socks on your cat, you can put a bow on him, whatever you want to do. Sometimes people like to start off with one they've created and then just add to it. So you are always welcome to do that as well. Okay, and the next one is the sound section. It is very much like the library that we had for sprites and the library we had for backdrops. There are sounds in a library, There's also a microphone so you can talk and make your own sounds. And sometimes when you're working in a project, you might want to narrate it, so you may want to be reading something as you're going. And then you can also upload a sound from a file. Okay, so pause the video, take a minute to go to the sound library. This is where it gets really loud and crazy in class, but you just want to click around and hear what different kinds of things are available for you. They are categorized like the other ones were as well. So just explore there so you know what's there. Once you've done that, come back to the video. Okay, hopefully you had fun playing with the sounds. That's usually something kids enjoy the most. So we're going to come back here to scripts, and we've got just a couple of other things to talk about before we actually start programming for this assignment. We want to come back here and look at our sprite, and notice that we have it selected because there's a blue border around it. I want you to come up to this little eye in the upper left-hand corner. When you click that, it opens a new window here, and it tells you a little bit about your sprite. Okay, so this allows you to name your sprite. I'm going to call him Cat1. And then let's talk about some of the other things that you see here. These things are very helpful when you are programming. The first one I want to talk about is this where it says direction 90 degrees. Okay, so this is referring to how our sprite is positioned on the stage. Okay, so notice this little dash line here. If I grab this guy and move it around, notice that it's moving the degree to which my sprite is facing on the stage. So this is how you can adjust him if you need him to go diagonal for some reason. This is how you can do that. Just grab this little dash and place him the way you need him. Okay. So then the next thing that comes in handy is this rotation style. There are 3 rotation styles that we're going to talk about. The main ones we use are this first one that is by default. This allows your sprite to rotate all the way around. In some instances, you are not going to want your sprite to rotate all the way around. For example, in a minute, we're going to program this cat to walk in a square like this. He's going to go dink, 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 dink. And what we don't want is when he gets up here, we don't want him to flip over and look like he's walking on his head. So if you need a sprite to stay upright and not turn so that he doesn't look like he's walking on his head, you would use this horizontal. Okay, this will keep him horizontal. And when I program him to go across, up, across again, and down, he will always stay with his feet down here. Okay, his feet will stay, he'll stay upright. He'll look like he's walking. And then this one is similar. It does not allow the cat to switch directions, whereas this one does. So if I have him walk across here, bounce off of the edge of the stage, he would switch direction and start walking the other way, okay, on the horizontal. Here, he would stay facing the direction you have him. So let's leave him here, horizontal. And then to turn this part off, you just click here. And now we need to talk about the backpack. The backpack is right here below your blocks palette. If you click on this little arrow, it opens it. You most likely don't have anything in your backpack. I have some scripts in my backpack from other programs that I've made that I didn't want to have to reprogram, so I just pulled them down here. This is just a safe place to keep stacks of code if you might need them for another file and you don't want to have to pull over all the blocks again. So it's just a way to keep them, copy them over to a different file. And we may use that a little bit later on. And then you just click that to close it down. Okay, I'm going to stop this video for now and watch the next video if you need to. It is going to be about actually coding this cat to draw a square, walk a square and draw a square.